Okay, welcome. I am so excited to teach you about ABGs. And this is not just any ABG class. This is a really fun and easy way to learn how to name your ABGs. And I'm going to teach you how to do that right now. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about normal ranges of ABGs. And this is important to know because when we're starting to name our ABGs, we've got to know our ranges, and it's going to make it so much easier. So go ahead and memorize the 7.35 to 7.45 is your normal pH. And if you do that, you'll know that if you actually are less than 7.35, you're going to be acidotic. If you're going to be greater than 4.5, you're going to be alkalotic. And this is going to be important to know because if you're in those ranges between 7.35 to 7.45, you're going to be compensated. If you are going to be outside of those ranges, you're going to be uncompensated. And that's going to be important because your body is going to be either compensating for the problems or it's not going to be compensating for the problems. So compensated means it runs in between those ranges and you have the middle ground of 7.40 to be your baseline. So if you are going to be 7.35 to 7.40, you're going to be compensated acidosis. If you're going to be 7.40 to 7.45, you're going to be compensated alkalosis. So that's the difference between your compensated and uncompensated. Now, your respiratory system is going to determine your PCO2, and it's going to be, am I retaining my CO2 or am I blowing off my CO2? And if you are less than 35, you're going to be alkalotic. You are going to be blowing off your CO2. If you are holding onto your CO2, you're going to be greater than 45 and you're going to be acidotic. Now, your bicarb, your HCO3 is your metabolic base, and that is your ranges going to be determining how your metabolic system is compensating and working with your respiratory system. So 23 to 27, I heard somebody once say it's the ages you wish you were if you're not those ages. And I am not those ages. So yes, 23 to 27 would be a great age to be right now. So for those of you who are, great. But if you're less than 23, you're younger, you're going to be acidotic. If you're greater than 27, you're going to be alkalotic. So those are important to know as you're looking at the normal ranges. Okay, are you ready now for the fun part? It's naming your ABGs. So your ABGs are going to have a name. You're going to have a first name, a middle name, and a last name. And you can only have one first name. It's either going to be compensated or uncompensated. And you can only have one middle name. It can either be respiratory or metabolic. And you're going to have a last name. It's either going to be acidosis or alkalosis. So you're going to be doing 2 steps to name your ABG. The first step is you're going to look at your pH, and this is going to determine your first and your last name. So you're going to look at this and go, what is my first name? What is my last name? And then you're going to be able to figure out the steps. So it's either going to be compensated or uncompensated, and it's going to be either acidosis or alkalosis. Now, we've got to figure out what system does it, and that is our middle name. So we're going to look at step 2, and we're going to look at our CO2 and our bicarb, and whichever one matches the last name, that's the cause. That's your middle name. So we're going to practice this now. Again, step 1, look at your pH. Got your first and your last name. Then we're going to look at the other 2 levels in our ABGs, our CO2 and our bicarb. And whichever one matches our last name is going to be our middle name. So let's practice. All right, let's practice. So you've got a pH of 7.15, a CO2 of 30, and a bicarb of 13. What is your first and your last name? So if you said a 7.15 is uncompensated acidosis, you are correct. Now, with our CO2 being 30, we're alkalosis, and with our bicarb being 13, we're acidosis. Now, which one matches our last name? It's bicarb. So our name is going to be uncompensated metabolic acidosis. Our middle name is going to be metabolic, and we're going to be basically blowing off our CO2 because we're in an acidotic state. All right, let's do another one. So you've got a pH of 7.50, a CO2 of 30, and a bicarb of 22. So you have to figure out where they fall on the levels, and then you can see what your first, middle, and last name is and name that ABG. You were correct if you said that 7.50 is uncompensated alkalosis. Now we have a CO2 of 30, which also is alkalotic, and we also have a bicarb of 22, and that's acidotic. Which one matches our first and last name? And that's our CO2. It's alkalotic. So our respiratory system did this. We are uncompensated respiratory alkalosis. And we are uncompensated. We are getting rid of our bicarb because we're in an alkalotic state. Okay, you got your next one. You got a pH of 7.05, you got a CO2 of 58, and you've got a bicarb of 19. First of all, this patient is not doing well if this is your ABGs. So what is going on? Okay, for 7.05, you know you're uncompensated acidosis, but what may have tricked you is your CO2 being high, which is in an acidosis state, and your bicarb being low, which is going to be in an acidotic state. And you're like, okay, well, that's then the two middle names. Well, they both match. So you are actually in a mixed disturbance at this point. Your patient's not doing well. That's obvious. And so you're in an uncompensated respiratory and metabolic acidosis. And your patient will definitely have a low blood pressure, a low cardiac output, and they're not going to be breathing too well. So you're going to have to fix this. All right, let's do another one. You have a pH of 7.37 and a CO2 of 52 and a bicarb of 32. What's your name? Okay, 7.37 is compensated acidosis. Because it falls within that normal range of 7.35 to 7.45, it's compensated. But it falls on the 7.35 to 7.40 side of the compensated range, so it's going to be acidosis. So your first and your last name is compensated acidosis. Your CO2 is 52, and your bicarb is 32. So which one matches your first and last name? And that's your respiratory, your CO2. It's acidosis. So your name is compensated respiratory acidosis, and you're compensating by not excreting your bicarb. All right, we're going to do one more. Our pH is 7.43, our CO2 is 49, and our bicarb is 33. Name that ABG. So if you said 7.43 was compensated alkalosis, you're correct because it fell in between the ranges of 7.40 to 7.45. So it was a compensated alkalosis. And if your bicarb was 33, that also matched. That's alkalosis. So your name is going to be compensated metabolic alkalosis. So I hope that was fun for you. I love to learn ABGs this way, and I actually think it is a great way to know and read an ABG really fast. Then if you understand ABGs, then you can actually treat the problem that much easier. So good luck and have a great day.